So, Rivernell, that was
pretty good.
That was remarkable.
That's a lot of lies.
Remarkable job of counting all the lies. And yet, the question that hangs out there is, why didn't Joe Biden do that? Why didn't Joe Biden respond to the lies in real time? Why wasn't Joe Biden able to take the incoming and respond back and push him back? Because I can tell you, Barack Obama could have done it. Mitt Romney could have done it. John McCain could have done it. George W. Bush could have done it. I can go back. Bill Clinton, my God. They all could have done it.
A few of those people could have done it, not all of those people.
Well, no.
It is not that easy to respond to a fire hose of falsehoods coming at you.
All right.
So I'm not defending it.
Right.
They're definitely, the lies should have been called out, many of them. Rev.
And he, by the way, he didn't even bring up that Donald Trump said he spoke to Vladimir Putin about Vladimir Putin's dream of invading Ukraine, and Joe Biden just let it pass. All right, Rev, your thoughts.
I think that as much as I was disappointed to devastated by Joe Biden's performance last night, the real issue this morning is not what is going to happen to Joe Biden. The question is what's going to happen to us as a country. This man, Donald Trump, unrepentant for what he did in terms of trying to overthrow the government, totally advocating last night to continuing to take away women's right to choice and openly advocating for states' rights, which had my mother where she couldn't use a bathroom in her native Dothan, Alabama, because the state of Alabama upholds segregation rights. And once you go down the road of states' rights, it's going to not only affect women's right to choice, which is disastrous, it's going to affect blacks, Latinos, and everything. A man that blamed everything about people coming across the border, and certainly we need to deal with the border, but a lot of what is going on, including his mismanagement of COVID, had nothing to do with somebody coming over the border. It is a real decision we're going to have to make on who is going to stop this man. If Donald Trump becomes president, all of that becomes in effect. And let me remind people, this whole news cycle is not over. The Supreme Court could drop some decisions today that further robs us of certain things. So we've got a rough road ahead between the Supreme Court and then the sentencing of the first former president of the United States. I think we need to not just talk about Joe Biden's future. He's earned that consideration. It ought to be his decision, but the priority must be what is the future direction of this country. And if Joe Biden is the man I think he is, he will make his mind up based on what will happen to the future of the country. He should not go down in history as one that saved it and then put it in jeopardy. If he's up to it, then go for it. And I think people should go with him. But if he's not, he's earned the right to say, I've done the best I can. Either way, many of us will respect him. But this is what's at stake, not Joe Biden's future, our future.
Hey there, MSNBC fans. I'm Luke Russert, and be sure to join me, Rachel Maddow, Jen Psaki, Lawrence O'Donnell, Steve Kornacki, Joy Reid, and many more September 7th in Brooklyn, MSNBC Live Democracy 2024. Click on the link for ticket information. We will see you there.